Thank you. All right. It's working. Okay, hi everybody. For those who might be new, just to let you know, we're taping the series on the steps for YouTube. Okay, right now, if you're interested, the series I did on codependency is on YouTube already, the 9-week series. And also the lectures on spirituality and recovery are also on YouTube. So you can check it out if you want to, okay? And then these 6 lectures of the steps will go on as soon as we finish them. We've got 2 more weeks to go after this. Okay. We're trying to get it all out there and see what happens. Also, my CDs that we used to sell here, the 2 sets of CDs, are now also on something called Clip It. If you go to the website under Vince's Corner, everything's there. You just can link right into it. So everything's out there now. I'm out of the selling business. It's out there for everybody. Enjoy yourself. You can download it, have a lot of fun. I'm really learning this technology stuff. It's pretty neat. I take training sessions for my granddaughter. Anyway, I want to mention that next Wednesday we start our 10-week club. So if you haven't got a ticket or you want to get one, the tickets are $25 for the 10 weeks. And we give out money each week up to $1,000 the last week. Even if you win, your ticket stays in for the whole entire 10 weeks. Okay, so believe it or not, the past 2 years we've had double winners twice in the past 2 years. Also, what I want to mention, the tickets are out front if you're interested, okay? As I say, it goes off next week. And also, a friend of mine donated 2 sets of Phillies tickets. There are 4 tickets in the set for the All-Star Club and with preferred parking. Those tickets are also being raffled, and it's $2 a ticket or 3 for $5. So if you're interested in getting some, one game is with the Mets and the other game is with the Washington Nationals. That'll go off in August. So they're out there also. We got lots of stuff out there. What can I tell you? And everything else is on the website. Check it out if you want to. Unless you're selling something, we can do a sale here tonight and see what happens. I thought I'd get out of this business when I left the priesthood. It didn't work. Can I tell you? There we go. All right. I'm going to begin by doing a reading from the language of letting go. And I picked a reading from August the 24th. We're on step 8 and 9 tonight. And I want to just mention 2 things to you. In this particular book, The Language of Letting Go, I find it really interesting that August 24th, 25th, and 26th are 3 good explanations of the 8th and 9th steps. So if you have the book, it's pretty neat the way they put this together in August. Step 8. Made a list of all the persons we had harmed and made willing to make amends to them all. The 8th step is not meant to punish us. It is meant to set us free from guilt, anxiety, and discord. We begin by making a list of everyone we have harmed on our journey, as we have struggled to survive. We have probably done more damage to ourselves than to anyone else, so we put ourselves first on the list. Often our tendency is to feel guilty about everything we've ever done, everyone we've ever come in contact with. That is unearned guilt. Writing helps us clarify whether or not we're open to punishing ourselves for no reason. We need to be open to guidance as we work this step, getting everything out of us and onto paper so we can be healed. Once we have made the list, we strive to become willing to make amends to everyone on it, because that is how we will heal. Making amends does not mean feeling guilty and ashamed and punishing ourselves. It means swallowing our pride and defenses and doing what we can to take care of ourselves. We become ready to improve our self-esteem by taking responsibility for our behaviors. We become willing to have our relationships with ourselves, others, and our higher power restored. Today I will open myself to an honest understanding of the people I have harmed. God, help me let go of my defenses and my pride. Help me become willing to make amends to those I have harmed, so I can improve my relationships with them and with myself and others. Okay. Before I actually get into the 8th and 9th step, I want to backtrack just for a couple of minutes and go over some things with you. You notice something very special about the 12 steps. We're actually doing the series right now, kind of emphasizing them towards codependency. But what's so special about the steps, the first 11 steps in the program are geared primarily towards teaching us how to work on ourselves. What I find so interesting is the concept of these 12 steps are basic principles of life. Beautiful way for us to learn how to live, how to make peace, how to make settlement, how to be able to move on. What's also so beautiful about the steps is the way they're set up. So they're trying to tell us something. When I started the series, I talked about spirituality, talked about the concept of spirituality. And the word spirituality means to come to an awareness of myself as a person. Our ultimate journey in life, our spiritual journey, is to come to a better knowledge of myself, to truly get to know who I am, and be comfortable being who I am. In the first step, we talked about powerlessness, surrender, and realizing the fact that we have to come to an acceptance of reality, take responsibility for our life and to grow. So to surrender, to be able to come to acceptance, and to realize the fact that we're powerless. And by the way, powerlessness is a gift. Every time you think you can control something, guess what? It doesn't work. I'm sorry. And basically, the more you try to control, the more you don't control, the more you chase things away. And so the real reality is to learn how to release, to let go. So the second and third step teach us faith, trust, and to come to believe that something is an energy or a spirit guiding us on our journey. And we can all call that something differently. But really, in reality, I truly believe if you have faith, you have trust, and you learn to let go, everything kind of comes your way. There's an old saying, when you learn to get out of the way, everything works. It's amazing, isn't it? We have met the enemy, my old famous comic strip from the Philadelphia Bulletin. We have met the Iggy. I have met the enemy is me. We're the ones that get in our way. We're the ones that make ourselves crazy, make ourselves half nuts. And that's why it's so important to open our hearts and open our minds to begin to realize the value of learning about this process. Steps 4 through 9 actually are a very simple formula to teach us how to look at ourselves and learn about ourselves as a person. And I can really relate to this in such a powerful way. I never realized in my own journey in my own life, I had no idea who I was. I knew how to perform. I knew the externals, but there was no internal. There was no spirit. Deep down inside, I was dead. What the steps helped me to do was to get in touch with a real sense of myself. So in the fourth step, it said to do a moral inventory of your life. Take an honest look at your life and be able to look at things in an honest way. It's being able to clean out and being able to realize the fact I don't want to hold stuff inside of myself anymore. I spent 44 years of my life carrying secrets. I don't want to carry them anymore. And as a result, that I'm learning over and over again the value of this fourth step. Then it says after you've written the step, and they always talk a lot about writing, because I've learned over the years that when I write, I process, I'm able to get things done. And so then I share it, another human being, with myself and with God, my higher power. I'm actually beginning the process of releasing, of letting go. Last week we talked about steps 6 and 7, getting in touch with our defects of character. What I love so much about those two steps, I call them the steps of humility, the steps of our humanness, the steps that help us to let go of false pride. They're the steps that allow us to be a human being, to realize the fact that we have defects of character. A friend of mine in the program told me this a long time ago. Said these two steps teach you that you don't really know anything, and that's okay. You don't need to know. You need to live. It's a big difference between the two. And so if we constantly live our life trying to figure it out and analyze it, make ourselves half crazy. I've said this over and over again, in step 6 and 7 bring this out so clearly. We have a tendency to literally live in our head. Your head will drive you crazy. I joke a lot, but I mean it when I say it. I consider this thing up here to be the control tower, the manipulation tower, and the con tower. And so many of us have spent time over the years trying to figure life out. Well, guess what? Maybe I'm getting old, I don't know. But I realized something today, I don't want to figure it out. I just enjoy it, live it, do the best you can, and celebrate the moments. And these two steps teach me that. Now tonight, I want to really spend some time talking about the 8th and 9th steps. And the 8th step tells us to make a list of all the people we've injured and the people we may have harmed. But above all, it says in that step, the most important person to make amends to is ourselves. The one person we have hurt the most is our own journey and our own self. And that's why we're going to learn something tonight. What I call the difference between what I call direct amends and indirect amends. You know, I realize over the years, even indirectly a lot of times, we may hurt someone. Someone may get hurt. A lot of stuff in life is based on perception. And so as a result then, very many times I have a tendency to literally either hurt somebody else by what I do and what I say, and at the same time, I hurt myself in doing it too. And I've also learned over the years that there are so many things in life that you have no power over them. And that's why in the 9th step it says to make amends whenever it's direct amends whenever it's humanly possible. Making sure we don't injure ourselves or injure or harm anybody else. What's so beautiful about that 9th step, it tells us that we make amends when it is a good situation to make them. And I have a formula I use. I make direct amends with someone if the following conditions are present. If they are open to participate in the process with me, if it will be a good situation for them as well as for me. Otherwise, we learn something called indirect amends. Now, I'm going to say this as strongly as I can say it. I make a strong recommendation not to do the 8th and 9th step unless you have guidance and you have direction. Don't be your own doctor. And don't go out and do it on your own. You'll get yourself in trouble. Because so many times I've seen over the years that because of shame, because of guilt, because of things that come up, we want to run and straighten everything out. You know, I joke about this, but I try to tell people, these are steps 8 and 9, not 1 and 2. And as a result, so many people want to straighten things out right away. I was working in a rehab yesterday, and I get a kick out of working in a rehab because I love when a lot of these people in the rehab get on the telephone and they tell their parents or their spouse or somebody, whoever they're calling, do this, fix that, go there, take care of this, take care of that, you know, and basically want everybody else to straighten their stuff out for them. When really, in reality, they're way ahead of themselves. I also try to tell families a lot of times, amends are the 8th and 9th step, not the first 2 steps. And that's why we have to, first of all, take the time to build a sense of faith, a sense of trust. We have to take the time to look within our own self and to work on ourselves. Take the time to allow ourselves to feel our humanness. Then we can start the journey of making amends. What I've learned over the years also in my own life is that so many times it takes time for this to happen. I'll give you an example in my own life. When I was a young priest, especially when the year I got ordained in 1966, I went to my first parish. I've always told you this story before, in Vineland, New Jersey. And I lived for 3 years with an alcoholic pastor who kind of treated me kind of bad. He treated himself kind of bad too. He was really a disaster. It was a shame. His life was totally out of control, and as a result, I spent 3 years of my life living in hell, and 3 years of my life trying my best to hide everything going on in the parish. And the bottom line was, I got out of there. I made changes in my life. I went through my own growth process. I never really heard from him again, but I had a lot of resentment towards him, which I was able to work through and deal with. And I'm sure he had a lot of feelings towards me. But God works in mysterious ways. I've often said this in recovery. 4.5 years ago, a long time later, he called me up. And he said, Vince, do you mind if I come and have lunch with you? I need to talk to you and I need to say to you that I'm sorry. And so we got together and basically he made amends to me. And the thing was, we actually made amends to each other. We formed a sense of peace. And unfortunately, 1.5 years later, he died from cirrhosis of the liver because he was already in pretty bad shape when he got into recovery. And unfortunately, he tried to get on the liver transplant thing, but it didn't work. And so basically, the one good thing was he made peace, and I made peace with him. That's why this process works 2 ways. We're able to settle things within ourselves, and then hopefully down the road, who knows when, things can get settled in others too. But it takes time. Let me kind of share with you what I refer to when I talk about indirect amends. One of the best ways I can do it is tell you some stories. Because sometimes stories speak louder than words. And I can remember working in a rehab back in the 80s, a place called Charter Fairmont Hospital in Philadelphia. And I remember this gentleman, and I love telling this story. It's funny, but it's not funny. Did you ever have one of those stories? Where it can make you laugh, but at the same time you want to cry. But anyway, him and his wife had a hard time together. His wife decided that she was fed up with his drinking, fed up with his behavior, and she literally said, that's it, I'm done. She went out, she got a divorce, she got everything kind of straightened out, and she actually ended up leaving there and moving up to Connecticut to get away from him. A couple of years later, she ended up getting married, settled down, her life had changed tremendously. In the meantime, he continued on his insanity journey. And then in the 80s, he ended up coming to Charter Fairmont, and he did a 28-day program. And the amazing part about it was, and again, I'll take you into the mind of an addict right now. He did the program. At the end of the 28 days, here's the insanity. He decided to go up to Connecticut, knock on his ex-wife's door, and say to her, I went to treatment, I'm in recovery now, can we get back together again? And he could not understand why she basically called the police on him, had him arrested, and why her new husband was not too pleased with him at all. And we can laugh about that. But that's some of the crazy stuff that we do. What do I want? I want to get everything settled right away. And because now I did this, everything should be okay. Everything takes time. Another good example, back in the early 90s when I was over at Northwestern Institute, and we had this lady who was one of our regulars, which meant that she paid a lot of visits to the inpatient program. But she had the same issue every time. She hated her mom, couldn't stand her mom. We'd bring her mom in, and the two of them would go at it, and finally her mom would say, I don't know what she's talking about. But she said, unless my mom makes amends to me and tells me that she is sorry for what she did, I'm not going to straighten out. And so she was doing something called expectations. And many of us do this, especially codependents. When I get to a point where I'm basically working on myself, I can't have expectations and expect everybody else to come on board. I can't expect them to say, oh, wow, you're working on yourself. Isn't that fantastic? They're going to get all excited. You have to realize something. Everything works in God's time, not in our time. If I truly do my own work, and I work on me, and make peace with situations in my life, then if things are supposed to be, they will be. I know on my own journey, and hers especially, I remember dealing with the issues of my mother. And most of you know I carried a lot of anger towards my mother for a long period of time. And some of those issues were mine. And it took me a long time to work through them. But I did for a long period of time carry some resentments, some hurt, and some pain. And I thank God today I was able to process a lot of that. But again, I couldn't do it by myself. Needed help. Needed people to help me with it. And one of the things I had to do was write to my mother, even though she was deceased, and be able to say goodbye to her, and be able to tell her that I love her, and ask for her forgiveness, and for me to forgive her, and do it in both directions. And then I went to the cemetery where she's buried with a couple of friends of mine, and we knelt down at the gravesite. I read my letters to her. I did my closure with her, and then I kind of buried the letter out there and basically did a little prayer service to say goodbye. One of the hardest things in the world to do is closure, to close things out. I truly believe so many of us end up with a lot of open-ended things. I see this very many times in relationships. We have to say goodbye. It's the hardest thing to say goodbye. And sometimes we have to do closure. Because what do we do a lot of times? We don't want to let go. We don't want to move on. And I've learned over the years that if I truly am able to make peace, to make settlement, then I can move on. I see my mom as one of my best friends today, one of my great teachers. I'm grateful to her today. It was only until I was able to process through that and be able to make amends to her. You can make amends to someone after they have passed. It's one of the things we have to do. And I know I did this to so many people in the course of my journey in life. I kind of lived on the thing of expectations. I can relate back how many times I tried to fix people. I invaded their space. I wanted them to be what I wanted them to be. And so many times I realized the fact I have no power over that. You have to let go. I always tell you one of the funny stories I went through, and I've said these stories before, but I want to kind of put them in so they go out on the air. But when I did my internship and my training way back in 1977, it's a long time ago. Anyway, when I did my internship and my training at DRC in Philadelphia, which is a rehab for street people, and I remember having a lady in my office, and she was an alcoholic, and I was going to get her into treatment. And I got news for you. She was not getting out of that office till she went to treatment. And I'm going to tell you, I drove that poor lady nuts. I was driving her crazy. And my mentor, Jack, came up to me, knocked on the window, and he called me out, and he said, he whispered to me, "The lady wants to drink. Leave her alone." I said, "We can't leave her alone. We got to fix her. We got to save her. We got to rescue her. She's got a problem." And Jack said, "The lady wants to drink. Leave her alone." I thought he was terrible. But I realized something today. I was actually doing harm to her. I was violating her space. I was violating her choice. And as a result, then, basically, she did have the right to drink if she wanted to. It's not for me to decide that. And I did that a lot in my early years. You know, I decided who was an alcoholic and who wasn't. You know, and I could walk down the street and pick them out. Not a problem at all, you know. But I realized it. When I got into my food addiction, it was the same thing when I got early recovery. I would go in the supermarket and do my shopping, look at everybody else's shopping cart and say, "That must be a food addict. Look at the food she has in there." Boom, boom, boom. You know, it's insanity. And yet we do this all the time. And I can laugh about this stuff today because I realized the fact I was very judgmental and I wanted everybody else to be me. Everybody else to have the same thing I had. If I got to suffer from this disease, then you're going to suffer too. But the bottom line was, I was playing all kinds of head games. But I realized that today. You know, we always do things the hard way first. Isn't that amazing? I love it. That's why I always say, remember my father telling me about that disease that we all have, uncapitosa. It's brickhead in Italian. We're a little thick up here. It takes a while to get through. But eventually we begin to get through. See, recovery's not up here. Recovery's in your spirit. It's in your heart. It's within the inside of you. It's a gentleness. It's the beauty of yourself as a person. And the beautiful thing about it is we have to realize the fact that, yes, we did harm people. Things happen in life. but I want to be able to clean them up, make settlement with them. I'll give you two good examples of what I'm talking about. Probably one of the most powerful experiences I went through was a gentleman from North Philadelphia. And I love this guy, but when he was in his active addiction, he was a little crazy. Here's an example of addiction and codependency meeting head on. His mother was out to save him. His mother basically would go to his apartment, clean it, put fresh groceries in, do all kinds of things for him. He in turn would curse at her, yell at her, scream at her. Actually, a couple of times threw a brick through her window, told her to stay away from him. It was like the War of Roses. It was unbelievable. They were going at it with each other. Eventually, he got so fed up, he finally said to her, I'm getting out of here. He volunteered, joined the Army, ended up in Vietnam. While he was in Nam, he got word that his mother had died. His response was, good riddance to the old bitch. That's where he was in his addiction at the time. When he left Vietnam and came home, he ended up in the VA hospital in Coatesville. He was really messed up bad. He spent almost 6 months in the hospital. And as a result, he was able to get himself into recovery and make some major changes in his life. I became friends with him because he came through Starting Point. And him and I had a long talk one day, and he said, Vince, I feel so bad. I need to make amends to my mom, but she's not here anymore. And so I had him write a letter to his mom asking for her forgiveness, and also basically asking her to forgive him, to work in both directions. And as a result then, myself, him, and a few members of AA went out to the cemetery in Philadelphia where his mother was buried. And we knelt at the gravesite. He read the letter to his mom. I did a prayer service. I actually did a funeral service to be able to say goodbye to the stuff that went on. He was able to make amends finally and make things more peacefully. There's always a way. There's different ways we can do it. Another good example to show you is there's a lady friend of mine who I've known for a long time, and basically in growing up she was kind of estranged from her children, and her daughter wanted nothing more to do with her because her mother was very controlling, very manipulative, used to drive her crazy, and disagree with everything that she did. I mean, some of it may have been justified, who knows? But anyway, they had a terrible relationship. She came to see me and we were talking, and she said to me, I don't know why my daughter doesn't like me. I tried to help her a little bit with the codependency stuff, and I tried to make her realize that, you got to kind of stay out of your daughter's business. Your daughter's not 3. At this stage of her life, she was actually 36. So you got to stay out of her business. Let her have a life. And it was hard, because she basically wanted to control everything, manipulate everything. It took a long time. So I said to her, look, leave your daughter on the back burner. Let's work on you. I need you to begin to look at yourself and make amends to yourself, to work through your own stuff first. As far as your daughter is concerned, send her a birthday card, send her a Christmas card, let her know that you love her, and leave her alone. But she might be sick, she might be this. I said, leave her alone. And so the bottom line was, over a period of time, it took a long time, but she eventually calmed down. She eventually began to really look at herself and work on herself. And I said, all you can do with your daughter right now is give her to God. Pray for her every day. Let it go. And things will go where they're supposed to go, when they're supposed to go. And here's the point I want to bring out. I truly believe that in making amends, you have to be able to have patience. Sometimes just give it to God and let things flow where they're going to flow. If they're supposed to be, they'll be. When they're supposed to be, they'll be. And not to be able to constantly try to make things happen, because we don't have that kind of power to make it happen. What's so beautiful about this situation was, over a period of time, it took a long time, actually 2.5 years, when finally her daughter one day called her up and said, "Mom, I got your Christmas card. Maybe it's time that we talked." And eventually they did work it out, but she also realized, and she had to say to her daughter, "I'm sorry. I'm sorry for the way in which I treated, the way things acted, and maybe now we can work things out together." And they're still working on it. What can I tell you? It all takes time. Healing is the most powerful thing on the face of this earth. But you got to realize something. Healing is not instantaneously. It's something that works over time. Think about it. How many times have many of us experienced going to a doctor, and the doctor says, "That's an easy operation, won't take long." Well, the operation might be easy, it may have worked perfectly. But you notice how the healing process takes a lot longer? It might be a real long process, the healing. And what I've learned over the years, when you heal slowly and gradually, the healing sticks. But it takes time. We all got to go through our stuff. And that's why you're going to find out there are times also when you're not able to make direct amends with someone. And sometimes you have to realize other people have rights too. If they don't want to make amends with you, it's okay. You don't have to. It doesn't mean you're bad or guilty or something's wrong with you. It just means that they have their choices too. It's their issue. All you can do is work on yours. Take care of what's going on inside of you. But I really believe something. If you have faith, back to the second and third step, if you trust, if you turn things over, if you let go, if you really work within your own self and your own individual self and make yourself healthy, and make amends to yourself and make peace with yourself on the inside, I truly believe spiritually that everything will go where it's supposed to go. It'll connect where it's supposed to connect. It'll happen the way it's supposed to happen. But there are all different ways of doing what I call indirect amends. Let me tell you kind of another funny one. I'm going to laugh a little bit. You know, and I've been around long enough now that I've heard all the stories. You know, it's amazing. I had this guy who came here, he's a real character. Now we're going to go to a nice South Philadelphia character. Anyway, he came here and he told me that when he was in his drug addiction, he had a little scheme. I said, "What was your scheme?" He said, "Well, I made my drug money by dressing up as a Catholic priest and going around taking up the block collection." It's ingenious, what can I tell you? I said, "Well, how much did you collect?" He said, "Probably over time. I kept changing neighborhoods so I wouldn't get caught." He said, "I probably collected about $6,000. He said, they kept me in drugs for a long period of time." He said, "That outfit was pretty good." So he said to me, "But you know, Vince, I feel so bad about this. You know, I'm in recovery now and I don't want to do this stuff anymore. How do I make amends?" Again, there's always a way. I said, "Look, here's the deal." I said, "How much money are you making now? Take a certain amount of money every month, and I want you to mail a cashier's check to a church of your choice in the Philadelphia area, okay, until you pay back the $6,000. It might take you 5 or 6 years to pay it all back, but that's okay. But see, what I'm saying is there's a way, if you actually work through this, to make amends. That's why I try to tell people, don't go out there half-cocked and do it on your own. You really need to realize this is a powerful, powerful 2 steps of humility. We have to learn to swallow our pride. We have to realize the fact that we are human and that we do make mistakes. That over the course of a journey, people very many times may not like some of the things you say or you do. And that's okay too. And sometimes you have to realize the fact that things happen. Can we clear them up? Can we make them be straightened out the best we possibly can? Here, a starting point on the side of our building, if we go into the garden area in the back, we have our recovery cemetery. And I love the place. It was one of my creations. And basically, we do a lot of closure work back there. A lot of times we end up, you know, doing a lot of writing, releasing, letting go, and burning. And we do prayer services. We do it with relationships a lot of times. We actually have buried people down there, not physically, but bury them emotionally, be able to let go of the past and things that have happened. I've done a lot of things. I'll give you an example of my own life, which I kind of am smiling about because today is the 18th of July, and 2 days ago, I got the opportunity to go visit one of my graves. I got to tell you the story. When I was a priest for 20 years. I went through my transition of leaving the priesthood. And I needed, with a lot of help, and I didn't do this by myself, I needed a lot of help from my therapist, a lot of help from very close people in the program to help me do this. Be able to say goodbye, to do closure. And closure's hard sometimes. But I picked July 16th because one of my great spiritual mentors, I call a spiritual guide, is the Blessed Mother. I have a great devotion to her. But especially a particular one is Our Lady of Mount Carmel. Because I was born and raised in Camden at that church. That church played a big role in my life. That's a church where everything took place that was important for me on my journey. I was ordained there. It was just a very special place to me. And so I kind of chose that day. So on July 16th, 1986, I went on a retreat. It was an Al-Anon retreat, and the purpose of the retreat was grief, loss, and separation. And on the retreat, I said my last Mass. I said goodbye. All of us on the retreat wrote letters saying goodbye to things we wanted to say goodbye to. And then afterwards, we have pre-dug a grave outside. You know exactly where it is, where the retreat house used to be in Blackwood. And it's under a tree on the side. If you ever want to take a walk with me, I'll show it to you. But anyway, we dug the grave. We all read our letters, put them in the grave. I put my letter to Father Vince and said goodbye to him. I also put my collar and my black shirt into the grave. And as I said goodbye, we did a prayer service. We had a funeral for everything in the grave. We closed it up and we said goodbye to a lot. That was really important for me because it wasn't just being able to make that decision, able to emotionally to be able to say goodbye to. And I realized so many times in the course of our journey in life, we have a hard time saying goodbye. We have a hard time doing closure. And it could be a lot of different things in a lot of different directions. Well, I think what's really important is the whole entire purpose of these 2 steps is for me to make peace within my own self, to settle stuff that I've experienced in my life. And if I'm able to settle it with others directly, wonderful. But if I can't, that's okay too. I still remember a gentleman, when I left the priesthood, I made a pretty clear decision that I was leaving. So I don't want to go back and play priest. So basically, a gentleman called me up and he said, my wife is dying. I would like you to come over and give her the last rites. And after she dies, will you say the Mass? I said, well, I don't mind coming over and saying the prayers. I knew the prayers by heart of the last rites. I'll come over, say the prayers, and do that stuff with her, but I can't say the Mass. I can come to the Mass, I can participate in it, but I can't say it. I did closure with that part of my life. Someone else will have to do that. Besides, they won't let me say it anyway because I didn't belong to the diocese anymore. Anyway, but he had a hard time with that. And he really got really angry at me. And he said, you can't do this for my wife. You can't do this just for me, just one time. I said, I'm sorry. The unfortunate part about it is he never, ever was able to work it through with me. And he actually went to his death still being angry at me. I can't do anything about that. Did it hurt? Yes, it did. Hurt a lot. So I tried everything possible to try to straighten it out. But you have to realize something. Some situations in life, you can't do a thing about them. We have to learn to let them go. We have to learn to give them to God. We have to learn to realize the fact that we don't have that kind of power. And we also have to respect, and here's the important word, have to respect other individuals' feelings and respect where they're at. And if they choose not to make amends with you, they have the right to do that. That was one of the hardest things I ever had to learn to accept in the course of my journey in life, and to realize that. You can take that into a lot of areas. You can take it into parenting. You can take it into raising children. You can take it into relationships. You can take it into all different areas of change and things that occur in our life. Even with many of us, we have to make amends to ourselves, and we have to be able to look at the reality of what life is for us. And so I really love these two steps, especially from the point of view. They really help me to do a lot of closure in my life. But take the time within your own journey, because I really share this with codependents especially. We don't realize what control did to us over the course of our journey. We don't realize how many times we try to control somebody else, or how many times basically people tried to control us. We don't realize how many times these things had an effect on us in the course of our journey. And I'm learning really, really powerfully in my life today that part of my disease is control. Part of my disease is fear. Part of my disease is basically not wanting to let go. But I realize today that once you're able to do this and make peace with it, you're able to move on. A friend of mine said this a long time ago, and we've heard this, the story of the phoenix, the principle. From the ashes, something new is born. When you do closure and allow things to come to an end, then you're open to new things to be born. But as long as you keep stuff and you hold stuff on the inside, as long as you don't settle things and make amends, then literally what happens is we continue the process of not being able to move forward. And I've learned over the years, when I hold resentments, when I hold these things deep down inside of me, I don't hurt anybody else. I hurt me. Most powerful thing in the world. You know what's scary about it? Sometimes somebody can have a resentment against you and even know they have it. And as a result, later on down the road when you work it out, sometimes you're going to experience things even though they experience. I'll give you an example of my own life, and I'm grateful to this gentleman, his name is Bobby, that we actually did make amends in the long run, but it's really interesting. Years ago when I used to run, when I started Starting Point back in the late 70s, it was the halfway house for people in South Philadelphia. It was also a soup kitchen. And a lot of times the guys that went through our house would keep coming back, to grab a free meal from us, from the soup kitchen, which was fine. But then we got to a point where we had so many people coming back, we didn't have enough food. And so we had to kind of set some boundaries. We had to really begin to say, look, we don't mind you coming back, but only for a period of time, then you got to move on your own. Well, one gentleman, I didn't even know this. I wasn't there one day, and my house manager had to tell him that he couldn't come anymore. Well, apparently he got a major resentment against me and carried it for a long period of time. So one day I walked into the South Philly clubhouse. He was sitting there and he said, "I hate you." I said, "Oh, okay." I said, "Can I ask you why?" He said, "Well, I came to the house," he gave me a long time ago, and he said, "to get something to eat, and you wouldn't give it to me." I said, "Okay." I don't remember that. Well, it wasn't you, it was the house manager, but you gave him the rule, you told him to do it. I said, "Well, I hate to tell you this, though. You've been carrying resentment against me for, I don't know, 18 months to a couple of years now. I hadn't had knowledge of it at all." And a friend of mine in the program said this to me. When you hold something deep inside of you, who are you hurting? You're hurting the other person, or are you hurting yourself? And really, in reality, you're hurting yourself. Well, thank God we were able to do some talking, we were able to work it out, and we were able to settle it. But I felt bad for him, because he carried that resentment against me for all that time and made himself miserable. And I didn't even know he was getting even with me. It's unbelievable. I find that so amazing how we can get even with someone by carrying a resentment against them. That's actually insanity, because most of the time people don't even know you're doing it. And we do it to ourselves so many times. So I guess what I'm saying tonight is, take your time. The biggest thing I want to share with you is this. When it comes to these steps and all these steps in the program, that's why I go back to the basics, the basics, the basics. The first word in the first step is the word we. Don't try doing any of this just on your own. You can do it intellectually, that's nice. But to really, really work these steps, you need to do them with others. Stay connected with others. We do our growing and our learning, realizing the fact I need help. Don't ever, ever, ever be afraid to say those magic words, help me, help me. I have learned over the years, I don't want to walk the journey of life by myself. I need people to help me and guide me. Because every time when I do it on my own and I try being my own doctor and being my own therapist, that's dangerous. Because then you know what happens? I don't do too good a job. I'm a little prejudiced, make myself a little bit crazy. And I've learned the most important thing in recovery is I got to be able to make peace inside in your spirit. If you make that peace inside of you, that peace will flow out to others. It just takes time, that's all. It takes investment. And above all, it takes guts. Real courage to be able to do that. Don't sell yourself short. So what I want to do next week as we continue the series, we're going to spend time on steps 10 and step 11. Again, two powerful steps. The 10th step is our daily inventory step, and the 11th step is centralized around prayer and meditation. I call them the gratitude steps, to look at them in a positive way. They're simple, they're not complicated, I'm sorry, but they do work. And I've learned that if I stay close to my higher power through prayer and meditation, if I take time, just a few minutes, to review the day and look at the day and make peace with the day, I go to sleep with a clear head and a clear mind. And you know what's so beautiful about it? You sleep better. Beautiful way and concept in life. And so it helps you understand these two steps a little bit better, to apply them to your own self and your own journey. And just try to remember, making settlement within your own self, making peace with yourself, and realizing the fact, you got to spend a lot of time with yourself every day. You might as well be at peace with it and enjoy it. And realize the fact that some of it's struggle, but be good to yourself, because you deserve it. And so we'll continue the series, and we'll get into the next two steps, and then we'll analyze the series 2 weeks from today and do step 12. And part of step 12, we talk about that last part of step 12, which is how do I apply these principles in all aspects of my life, and not just in certain areas. It's a way of life when you really come down to it. So thanks for coming out. Hope that it helped. 2 more announcements real quick. If you want to stick around, we have a Naranon meeting tonight. It's over in room 29. If you have questions about it, this beautiful lady is sitting here. She'll be very happy to tell you all about it. And also, Tony will be here tonight to do the meditation class, which will take place in room 24. You're welcome to stay for that also. We do meditation class after the 7 o'clock lecture and also after the 12 noon lecture. And our lectures now are at 12 noon and 7 o'clock each Wednesday. Thanks for coming out. We have a way we close. Can we join hands and we'll say the Serenity Prayer. Let me get untangled here. Oh, we made it. Good. Okay. Who woke us up this morning? God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. We are somebody special, because God don't make no junk. Good job.
Week goes fast.
It does, it really does.
Keep yourself busy, don't you?
I'm going to try to buy some extra to give out that. Oh, it's all right. I just want to make sure I can eat. I think like a bartender.
See you next week.
I'm pretty sure that's right. Yeah, I got it. Thank you. Yes.
Never know, never know.
Okay, so it's the good well, morning prayers, evening prayers, and like healing for all these different prayers. It's like a good prayer book. So I want to give it to my dad because his Parkinson's NRA, and he's suffering from two, and they're both very, tough on your body. So I just want him to have it. It's probably like one prayer. So 70. It's gonna be 74 this a month from today. Oh, yeah, that's tough. Yeah. I know, and I'm like worried that I'm gonna end up with one of them, and they're both really, really tough, So, and my mom, well, dementia runs on my mom's side. So I'm like, well, my grandma lived to be 94, with it, but she got it probably, I guess, right around her 70s, little by little, but still, she lived to be 90 something.
Yeah, but they say it's the early onset.
Yep.
She might get developing it. I think she definitely. And also,
It seems like every single woman on my grandma's side had it.
yeah, if you live for long, you're more likely.
Yeah, some of them did, but that was like, my great grandma, my grandma, her sisters, everyone was.
Yeah, and how long did they live?
They didn't, no, some of them didn't live that long, some of them got Alzheimer's, some got dementia. So that's what's scary. And then my dad's side, like, they have Parkinson's and, alright. And they're, I'm like, oh, please, I mean, I don't need everything to go.
Why?
I don't think I'll still be alive.
Yeah, but you don't worry about it until you know.
I didn't, I know.
Yeah, because
I get checked.
Yeah, my mother, she was like, and I was on the side. She died.
I know, it's what I mean, it's your brain.
He's in better condition than I was. Really, this guy's in good shape. He died at 8.
I know, it's still, I know it's a good life and everything, but it just seems like right after he retired, he got, like, he already knew about the one, but the other one came off full force, and he never had a chance to really enjoy it. So he's really pushing me to enjoy my life now, So, in your 40s, you're approaching 50, you gotta enjoy your life.
Yeah, and I think it's also being active, 40 helps.
Yeah, it starts at 8 o'clock. You know what 24 is?
That's hereditary too, though.
You go out and around the bend.
He's never said around, he's a hard worker, he's always working.
Okay.
So he always is working, but he also
Okay, shut
does
that
things
off.
with Stan's on.
How are you?
I'm good.
So like I said, I can't worry about it, but I'm worried about him.
I'm good. This is my daughter Haley.
Yeah.
And I'm heading to an Aeronaut meeting. Mary says,
That's where? Since February.
oh, Lisa, you're your own, right? No, Lisa.
Yes.
That's what he told me, Teresa yesterday, Lisa today.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say.
He knows,
No, Lisa.
he told me a few times.
Nice seeing you.
Remember him talk. So, yeah.
What time is your appointment?
Well, let's have him.
A lot of these talks that they do, they're on YouTube. Take care.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, we saw your thing.
Everybody still have a lot of stuff.
Yeah? Well,
That's what
good.
this whole series we're taking it now. It's gonna go on YouTube.
Yeah, she told me she thought you were here. First time, because we usually come on different days. I think we come on Wednesday, right? Well, we'll be here next week, Saturday also.
7 o'clock, and also website.
Yeah.
They have a thing with Lisa's Corner,
Yeah.
and all the YouTubes and CDs.
That's cool.
You get linked right into it.
I like it.
We got everything linked now. It's amazing.
High tech. All high tech.
My granddaughter has me so trained. All my stuff is out on YouTube. It's
That's
on
awesome.
Kindle.
Yep.
and everything.
Mhm. Yep. You can reach out to anywhere. You don't even have to leave your living room.
Guess what? I went out with the sewing business. Put it all out there.
Yeah. Why not? It's great. Well, we just wanted to stop in and say hello. Thank you. Take care of yourself. We'll have to tune in and see what's going on.
Take care, okay?
Yeah.
And take care of my Melissa for me, okay?
Well,
All right.
she takes care of us.
She's a good
She
lady.
keeps us in line.
Okay.
See you later.
Take care.